Anyone else? If not, Eric, I'm just going to hand it over to you. If you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into WordPress. I'd love to hear that because I know you're a heavily WordPress developer. So not the long story, the short version.
Yeah. So I'll try to keep that portion as brief as possible. As I like to say, I dabble with WordPress. I built my first website using Notepad back like a couple of days after Windows 95 was released. I've made my way through Dreamweaver, Front Page, all the terrible applications, and I kind of stumbled into WordPress. I had an HTML site that I hated, and I had to rebuild it, and I didn't want to rebuild HTML, so I looked for something else. Drupal sucked, Joomla sucked. WordPress was simple for me to build something, and that was 2009. And I haven't looked back. I do focus a lot, mostly on WordPress security and email deliverability. But okay. I'm cheap and I don't want to hire people to do things, so I keep learning other things to support my own site. And
that's where we differ.
Yeah, and for anybody that hasn't heard me speak, I'm very informal. So throw questions as I'm going, throw them in the chat. I'll try to catch as many as I can as I go, because they make more sense if I answer them as we're going than later on. I will send Christina a link to the notes, the slide deck, within the next 24 hours, and then just come grab them. Google Tag Manager. I have an extra file that's going to be included, and I'll talk about that.
What's the name of your company?
Seventh Circle Designs. And
what do you do?
Primarily, I do development work. I don't do a lot of design work. I usually farm out to designers. My contact information is at the end, but I'm also going to put my email address in the window. And as any good techie, I don't know how to type and talk at the same time. So let me share my screen and okay, there we go. So like I said, all my contact information is at the end. My email address is in the chat window. Anybody feel free to reach out to me. It doesn't make a difference. How long do I have to talk? 45 minutes? Okay, I'll say 45 minutes. So today I was going to talk about Google Tag Manager, what it is, what it can do for us, why we might want to use it. Little history behind Tag Manager and what it is. It's a simple way for us to manage tags. Wow, that makes it less confusing. What are tags? Tags are little snippets of code. That could be a Facebook pixel. That could be Google Analytics. The primary thing that most of us start with is Google Analytics. I started migrating into Tag Manager when Google released GA4, because all the plugins out there on the site for our sites supported universal analytics only. Well, I didn't want to add another plugin, have to add code snippets, have to manage extra pieces. So I looked at a solution that allowed me to migrate everything into one single place that I could manage things. The slides are to keep me on track because I get distracted. A lot of the things that we like to track, obviously demographics, knowing who our audience is, knowing what our audience is doing, where they are. I mean, if you're, I do my development work. If my target audience that's coming to my site is middle-aged men with a high income located in South America, well, I need to design my site according to middle-aged men with a high income in South America, not to people in the Midwest of the US with a very low level income. What kind of technology they're using, whether or not they're primarily mobile devices, desktops, these nice big retina displays. If my users are not using those retina displays, I don't have to necessarily focus on that as my primary target. Tracking of links, tracking of form entries. So if somebody actually clicks on a form and then follows through, this is just basics that we might want to cover. E-commerce. Google Analytics will track our e-commerce, how much income a page is worth, how much income is generated on a page. But this is something that a lot of people have started to get into, is heat maps. And, you can install a plugin. That's great, fine. But a heat map lets you track where people are resting their mouse, where people are clicking, where people are scrolling, and give you an idea of the design of your system and how it's working. All of this can be tracked through Google Tag Manager, because Tag Manager does not actually do the tracking. Tag Manager takes the tracking information and sends it to the right locations. Now I'm gonna demo the plugin that I use here in a second. So the basic things that I usually have included when I'm setting up Tag Manager. Now, Tag Manager is a free service from Google. Tagmanager.google.com. Free service. Google Analytics is free as well. I believe that Analytics does have a paid version. I couldn't understand why anybody would need to pay for that. But within the last year or so, they released GA4, a new analytics, still in beta, but we might as well start collecting that data so that when they tell us to switch over, we're not caught off guard and just, oh, all of my legacy data is gone. I've only got this new data from this point in time. I wanted to collect everything simultaneously because it doesn't impact my site doing it this way. Collect everything simultaneously and be able to have that data going forward. You might want to track Google AdWords. Facebook Pixel is a very common one that people want. But it could be the LinkedIn Pixel, Yelp, Twitter. So many of these services offer a pixel. Cloudflare offers analytics. They'll actually do website analytics on your site, and you can embed that via Tag Manager.
Eric?
Yes.
Will you please give a very quick overview of what it means when you say a Facebook pixel?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Hold on. So a Facebook pixel, I'm actually going to pull something up for you. But a Facebook pixel is it's a tracking cookie on your website that sends the data back to Facebook so that you can collect the analytics about your visitors and your users. So that if you want to run Facebook ads later on, you've got this data available. If you're running Facebook ads, you have to have the Facebook pixel running. But it's a tracking pixel. It's a tracking cookie that collects that data for Facebook in this case.
Thank you.
Now, CallRail, Hotjar are more of heat map tracking and things like that. A lot of different pieces that we can implement. The limit is endless. Each one, it's independent of your needs. So let's actually look at how to do this and see some of the benefits of what I would want to do. Right now, Christina, you've got a group of people that you work with. If everyone has access to the website to install, oh, I want to track Clarity, I want to track Facebook, I want to track this, I want to track that. you end up with how many plugins installed, and then how well does our website work after all of those plugins have been installed?
Well, then how many users do I have to give access to install all
Well,
that stuff?
there is that as well. How many do we want to give them access? How many of them have any idea what they're doing about installing this stuff and configuring it? But we don't have to do that. With Tag Manager, we can actually manage it all through one location that keeps them off of our site. Obviously, when you have that many different things that you want to track, you get the performance, the security, and the compatibility issues of plugin bloat. When I looked at a site, I looked at a standard site for me running WooCommerce. So I've got Google Analytics for WooCommerce, plus I've got my standard analytics. Well, then I also have my Facebook Pixel plugin. It's like, okay, well, I've now got 3, but I'm only getting universal analytics. I don't have GA4. So then I've got to embed that somewhere else. Oh, and then Cloudflare. So I've got to embed that somewhere. So I end up with 5, 6, 7 different plugins. And there are several out there, and I won't name any of the ones that I absolutely hate, but there are several plugins out there that give you a nice, pretty dashboard for the end user to see stuff in their WordPress site. And it could be a tracking plugin, it could be a security plugin. I don't want my end user just sitting on their site watching traffic on the site, because again, it's performance issues. And it's a security issue. They log in, they wander off, they don't log out of their desktop. Who else in their office now has access to just sit down and tinker? I want to keep them only logging in for what they actually need to do, posting their content, their products, whatever. If they want a nice, pretty report, I send them a report. It's an automated Monday morning. They get a nice little thing that says, hey, look at all the cool stuff that happened. So a nice performance boost as well, because I can limit this to a single plugin that makes my life easy. You can do this without a plugin, but for most people, I like to use the plugin. And with that single plugin, once I configure it on my site, nobody ever has to touch the plugin. It's done. Anything that we need to configure, we need to add the Facebook pixel, add a second Facebook pixel. I've seen that. I've seen people running 3 different Facebook pixels. I don't have to install different plugins and custom code things. I can do it all right at Tag Manager. Loading less code means better performance on my site. I am talking quick through these because really the meat of this is showing you guys how Tag Manager is configured and what we can do over there. Getting rid of the need to have multiple plugins doing the same thing for different segments. So there's quite a few things that we can do. We can integrate this with cookie consent. Obviously, with between California with their new CCPR, I believe it is, that's coming out. The current California rules, Virginia, Australia, GDPR, whatever changes a new policy next week. We can integrate cookie consent into this, so that if we've got our cookie opt out on the site, it'll tie into Tag Manager and set cookies accordingly per whatever our requirements might be. And this is just a neat one. Safe preview. When I deploy these settings, I can preview them before they go live so that I can make sure everything's working. With plugins on our site, the preview is you put the stuff out there and hope for the best. Because how do you test Tag Manager, Google Tags in a staging environment? Not always the easiest thing, depending upon your staging environment. But here on the live site, because you're not touching the live site, you're just clicking through it, all the settings are on Google's servers for us to preview right there. Now for previewing, there is a plugin that I use. And that plugin is called Data Slayer. That plugin allows me to look at my my data layer and all the data that's being sent through Tag Manager in my inspection console. So when I pull up the inspector, if I have Data Slayer on, which I don't, if I have Data Slayer on, it will actually show up here in my inspection console. And then I can click through and I can see what's going on. So the few things that we need. Hey, thank you. Perfect. The few things that we have to make Tag Manager work. None of these cost any money. A Google Analytics account. And your analytics account should be configured to also do GA4. If you've already got Universal Analytics, you can configure it to add a GA4 tag and have that ready to go. I'm not going to walk through setting up analytics. Everybody's needs are different on that one. A free Tag Manager account. And Tag Manager is, again, tagmanager.google.com. And what we end up setting up is when we create this, we end up with containers. Containers are what we where we end up doing our configuration in Tag Manager. I'm going to demo the container. And in the notes, there's going to be a container pre-configured that you only have to change 2 settings. And it's pre-configured and ready for you to go to deploy Tag Manager today. It should take you, if you've got analytics working, less than 10 minutes to have Tag Manager deployed from the time you download the notes. And you need a free plugin. And there's my free plugin. Google Tag Manager for WordPress. This will take care of everything for us, from embedding the Tag Manager code to doing all of our site-side configurations. This guy, Thomas Geiger, also has a website that has quite a bit of information about the plugin configurations, a nice little blog. So when you're configuring this plugin, obviously I like to configure my Tag Manager settings first. The 2 variables that we have to configure is we have to embed our Universal Analytics code. So I'm gonna do a lot of these live, and then I'll show you the actual the slides are just for your notes. So what we have is we have variables, and you'll get all of these variables, but the ones to configure are going to be GA settings. And if you were to create this variable and add it, I'll create a new one, show you how to do it. New variable, and we choose what it is. And in this case, this is just Google Analytics settings. And it's our tracking code. That's it. That way we have one tracking code that we have to do, and we can reuse the container later on for something else. I'm going to discard that. And what you'll see happens after I've configured this variable, tracking code, and then it'll show what other things are referencing it that I create later on. So these are all the different references to that variable, so that I only have to manage the variable in one place, making life quite easy. I create a second one for GA4. And again, this one takes the GA4 tracking code. with those two variables, I can then start working my way through everything else. Whoops. So I create my standard settings. And my GA4 settings. I like to, not everybody likes to do this, but I like to exclude logged in users. So this plugin will send the user login state, the user login role. So I can actually set it up, creating a variable for that visitor login state, data layer variable, which is where all the data is sent out, and then set a default value that the default value is logged out. This allows me to build something as we go forward. It's also going to use this next piece right here, where I choose a visitor type. This is the visitor role. So I can then come in here. So from these variables are just different pieces of data that we're pulling in from the plugin. Yes.
Can you go back for a second? What was that visitor role again?
So the visitor role, let me pull that up here. Visitor role. Hold on.
I mean, that's for login users, or is that for?
So visitor login state
Right.
is
That right.
default of logged in. Visitor role, visitor type.
Visitor type, yeah.
Visitor type is just a data layer variable that's being sent by the plugin.
Are you
once I declare this variable, I can then use this to create a trigger.
Okay. Okay.
The variables are the incoming data.
All right. Okay.
The triggers is where I can configure what to do with that data. So I have a fairly standard naming convention: an event, a page view, PV for page view, event for events. So what I'm doing is I'm now taking the trigger type is page view, and I'm saying this fires on some page views. If the login state equals logged in, the visitor type regex, so I can do my nice little query, is an administrator, and debug mode is false. Because if I'm doing it where I'm logged in, but I'm debugging, I still want it to track me because it's just a testing purpose. This is allowing me to create what's going to be an exclusion on my page views. So I can actually say, hey, you know what? I also want to exclude editors. There's no P in editor, no matter what language you spell it in. So I just exclude administrator and editor, and this is ready for me to then use it in a tag. Because this is what's called a trigger. This is used to build the tag. It's kind of a layered piece. All of these are pre-included in the export file that I've got for you. So this is where I move on to actually what's going to be on the site. And in the case of the one I'm looking at here, Universal Analytics, page views. So the type is Universal Analytics, tracking is page view, but I'm pulling my GA settings so that I can just manage that code in one place, because I've got multiple tags using the GA settings, and I don't want to have to go into each one if I want to reuse this somewhere else. And then I'm triggering it on all page views, with the exception of logged in admins. So I can exclude specific user roles, specific logged in user roles. I had a case that we were tracking e-commerce, but they had a user role of wholesale, and they didn't want to track e-commerce for their wholesale customers, only for their retail customers. So we excluded wholesale customers here on e-commerce tracking. So it allows me to build custom rules, and stack multiple pieces together to build out these configurations. And there's my my universal code. So the slides are really, you'll look at those. When I do a GA4 version, I still use that same exception of the admin users. I use the same all page views, but I'm telling it it's a GA4 and to use the GA4 property. That way, anytime I change the GA4 property, it just updates this, so I can reuse that container. So if I've got 5 different sites, I build the container once, deploy the container to each site, each tag manager section that needs to track a different domain, and I can put that code in. I can put the code into that variable. The hardest part about this is configuring tag manager. So actually, let me step back there. So the hardest part is configuring tag manager. I'm going to send a container that's got all of this. Under admin, after you create your tag manager account and you've got your default workspace, under admin, there is an import container option that allows you to just pick your container file. Pick your container file, decide whether or not you want to overwrite or merge. So if you've already got tag manager running, you might put this into a new workspace so that you can play with it. If you import it into your own workspace, then what you want to do is you want to use the merge function and the rename. That way it doesn't overwrite your current settings. I'm going to stop for questions for a second before I dive into the plugin itself. Okay, then I'm going to dive into the plugin itself. So the hardest thing, the piece that you're going to need to do this is your tag manager ID. So when you've created your tag manager account, your tag manager ID is this GTM number right here at the top. That's all you need, is that code right there. If you click on it, it will actually pull up information, tell you how to install Tag Manager. But really, doesn't make a difference. All you do is you copy this code, paste it into this field here on the Tag Manager settings. And generally, you're going to be okay with the codeless injection. Any of the newer themes. The only place you may run into an issue, if you have themes off of Theme Forest, if you have a theme that's really old, maybe you're running something 2015 or prior. There may be some newer ones as well, but Generate Press, Genesis, Astra, Oxygen, all the big ones fully support this codeless injection, which just makes life easy. If you need to hard code stuff, it tells you what data you need to insert into where, so that it works correctly. You can use worst case, you might have to use an insert headers and footers plugin, but 99% of the time, codeless injection works. Once you've got those done, we've got quite a few options. Excuse me. We've got quite a few options of what we can set up and configure. I'm going to cover the standards that I like to configure. Under basic data, you want to track your post and page visits. I usually skip out certain pieces depending upon where my visitors are from and what guidelines I have to follow for privacy laws. In general, I ignore the post author ID because it's a numeric value that's really not helpful to me. And I usually ignore this post count because I don't care. But the rest of this information, this helps me when I send that data to Google Analytics for that to say, oh, they landed on my about page and they traversed through to this page and to the next page and they exited on this page. Having these post titles allows me to track that data. So I usually configure, where did it go? I usually configure and track everything on the posts page except the post author ID and the post count. Post count, I've yet to figure out a reason why I would need to track that. Search. If you check this, it'll actually collect the search terms that people use when they're searching. I've had people that would have wanted to know that on their reporting. So collecting that is as simple as turning on this checkbox and it'll send out that data to Google Analytics. I will skip Google Ads because unless you're doing Google Ads, it really doesn't make a difference. But the visitor section, this is what allows us to exclude our logged in users. I avoid tracking. I usually avoid tracking the user ID and the email address and what day their login was created. None of that affects my excluding them on page views. I just need to know, are they logged in or not? What their user role is. And sometimes if I'm excluding somebody based on a username instead, I might need a username. Visitor IP, this one's tricky. Privacy laws, use what works best. I won't make a recommendation on that one because there's a different spot that will help us track where our users are coming from without violating any potential privacy laws. Browser data. This is super important in my opinion, because if I know what browsers they're using, if I know what operating systems and things like that, it helps me design my site accordingly. If none of my visitors are using IE6 anymore, I can finally turn off all support for it. Or if you're like me, I've already made the decision and said, if you're using IE6, you're not my target audience. I don't care. But that's my opinion. And I have lots of those. And if you care to hear more of my opinions, you'll probably get those. The weather data, there's only one field that makes any difference on this tab that I suggest everybody check. Cloudflare country code. If you're using Cloudflare, the Cloudflare country code helps you determine where your visitors are coming from. Because otherwise you're not actually seeing the visitor's IP address on your website. You're seeing Cloudflare's IP addresses. So that's the only one that I really check on this page. You'll notice all of these say experimental. They're works in progress, but this country code is immensely important because we're all using Cloudflare for our sites, or should be. Now, here's where we start to get into things that could potentially impact performance on our site. The general events, these aren't a big deal. These are very minimal. Form fills, new user registration, user logged in. If you need them, that's fine. Primarily e-commerce sites for the new user registration, user logged in, or if you've got like a membership site or something like that. But the media events, these will impact performance. So if you're only using YouTube videos and you only want to track YouTube videos, don't turn on Vimeo and SoundCloud, because each one of these is more data that's being sent to the data layer, more data and more tags that might trigger that you might want to use to collect this data. You can get too many tags and kill performance. But most of us are either doing YouTube or Vimeo videos. We're usually not doing both. So you turn on which one you're using. I've never seen anybody posting SoundCloud on their sites correctly. I've seen them doing it, but I've never seen them doing it correctly. They're usually doing it in a fashion that's annoying when you're in a work environment. Thank you, autoplay. See, I told you there was an opinion here somewhere. So on the next one, you'll notice I did skip a section because it's a section that nobody really needs. It's the the deprecated section. I scroll right past it because you just don't need it. I don't even know what's on it, but they're things that they're getting ready to pull from the plugin or that Google's already said we're getting rid of. Scroll tracking. This is what helps when you're doing your heat maps. This is what helps when you want to find out how far through a page somebody's visited. You've got that landing page. Did somebody click on that first link at the very top? Did somebody scroll 3/4 of the way, all the way? This will actually track how far people were scrolling on your page for heat map tracking and things like that. And if I'm going too quick, somebody yell at me. Under the security section, this is where somebody like Christina or I could really benefit, and probably several other people. We have the ability to say, no, you cannot run these tracking pixels or other features on the site. We have a selection where we can say disable the feature, allow everything except the items listed below, or block all except the checked items below. So we can tell people we don't want them running this AB Tasty generic tag, whatever that might be. So that if you get a marketing group that's overexcited and they think, well, you know, if tracking Facebook is great, how many other places will let us track stuff? Can we track all 100 of them? And marketing people like to do that. We can eliminate that so that they can't do that. We also have the option to do the same thing for variables and for triggers. The only form it directly integrates with is contact form 7. Okay. It'll tell you whether or not you're running contact form 7. There are tricks to tracking other forms. I use Gravity Forms, and there's ways to track the forms on click, on entry, and things like that. If anybody sends me an email later this week, I can give you links to some things that I use for tracking some of those things. You'll notice WooCommerce. There's the ability to configure WooCommerce data layer. Not going to step through that one. CookieBot. If you're doing the CookieBot consent, this allows you to integrate directly with that right here in the plugin, so that it sends that data correctly over to the data layer and allows us to do a cookie opt-out. So
wait, real
I'll
quick,
leave this
on
for a
that cookie-
second.
On that CookieBot, is that something that you would recommend being in Europe and you're seeing it everywhere, is how much data users are allowing you to collect? what is that cookie bot doing? Is that, because I'm confused. If you've got cookie bot turned on, it's supposed to be allowing what kind of information you're collecting, but is Google Tag Manager, if you have that turned on, is that another layer of protection for the user? Or
No. So and what I'm doing, I am actually in the process of logging into a site that's got Tag Manager live. And then I will show you the settings in there. Okay, so Tag Manager under Cookie Bot. All this is doing is integrating the Cookie Bot with Tag Manager, because the official rule, as I last read it, was that you cannot set any cookies until permission has been granted. So if I visit a website, they cannot even set a cookie for analytics or anything until I've said yes. And this checkbox here integrates that functionality with Tag Manager.
okay, all right, got it.
WooCommerce, a lot of information. You do tracking, classic or enhanced, and you get a lot of configuration about what you want to track. There is a thing for AMP, because unfortunately AMP has yet to die. And there are some advanced options if you want to do not track settings, but WordPress doesn't really support do not track, so it's kind of useless. So on this security tab, there are a lot of options of things that we can exclude. It just kind of keeps on going. So we get quite a few options that we can exclude. Triggers as well. There's a few, and variables. There's a few that we can exclude. So let me switch over to Tag Manager. And here's the big piece. Tag Manager does not store any data. Tag Manager is your middleman that is taking your data and sending it where you're requesting. So in the case of this container, you'll notice that I've got e-commerce paused. Contact form 7 is paused. Because they're paused, they will never fire on a website visit. This is just a standard container. And then what I do is I add and enable the extra features as I need. So everybody will get this container that's got all these different features. If you're running e-commerce, you unpause the e-commerce ones and use them. If you're running contact form 7, you can unpause this one and use it to collect data. But if you're not, leave them paused and they have no impact on your performance or on the data that's being collected. The basic one collects page views for standard and GA4, basic scroll tracking, and it's collecting form data. Basically somebody visiting a form, entering it, leaving it. I've created it so that the constants are in one folder. You can easily just come in here and click on the constant and edit this to your need. And do the same thing here. And just edit your tracking codes. And then all the other variables and products and triggers and everything are in a folder. So if you want to integrate this with an existing one, it'll still sort everything separately and it'll keep it nice and organized for you. This is the initial container that I use on all of my sites. And then I add as I need. So when I'm talking about adding tags, if I want to add a new tag, we also have an option to look in the template gallery. The template gallery is really handy if you want to do core web vitals. This one by Simo Ava. Whoops, I didn't actually mean to click on him. If I click on Core Web Vitals, this will allow me to import that data and collect Core Web Vital data into my my analytics. If I want to do Facebook, there are templates pre-built out here that allow me to pull in and do the Facebook pixel, so that I don't have to work as hard. And then all I'll have to do is I will have to add my Facebook pixel number, but all the hard work is already done. There's a lot of templates out here for this. Be wary of them. Not all of them are great. Some of them are better than others, but Simo Ava, and I hope I did that. Yeah. Simo Ava, he is not the guy that did the plugin, but he's got a great blog. He's got a lot of good information about things that that we can do with Tag Manager. I believe he actually had one I saw just the other day about the cookie consent. Questions? What can I show you? And I'll pick on Eagle if nobody wants to ask a question, because oh no. Reports are a cool question.
There we go.
Facebook, if Facebook generates reports, you would get your reports from Facebook. For Google Analytics, obviously reporting would come from Google Analytics. I do have, and I'm actually going to drop a link to that here in a second. I'm going to, no, I say I'm going to drop a link. That might take me a minute. I am looking for the link. I've got some templates that are kind of neat for Google Analytics dashboards and reporting. But what I usually do is I'll usually go into analytics, and depending upon the needs of the site, I will usually do different reports, and I'll configure them to just be sent out periodically. There we go. Here are the 3 items that I import into Google Analytics. And they, what they are is they are some custom dashboards. Now this is a low usage site that I'm pulling up, but they are some custom dashboards that give me a lot of neat information, and these are from the Google Analytics gallery. So these are just pre-built, and you just import them.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that Google Tag Manager isn't creating the reports. This is just a way for you to manage all your containers.
Correct. Yes. Tag Manager is designed to get all your data straightforward from your site to wherever you want it. If you're only tracking analytics, then you've only got the one place to look. But if you're tracking, if you're doing Hotjar, you've got to go to Hotjar to get that data. If you're using Microsoft Clarity, you've got to go over there to get that data.
So
yeah, I think of it like they call them containers in here, but I think of them also as just like a little, it's a single line of code that you're going to add to your website. That's
Yeah,
the Google Tag Manager, that right there. That's all
That's
you're
the-
adding to your site.
Yep.
And then but all the other things. So what we said in the very beginning was, hey, we've got, 5 marketing tracking whatevers that we need to install. Here's the 5 pixels, the 5 pieces of code, whatever it is. And instead of putting them all into the website, which by the way, Google's going to kind of flag because it's going to bring up all these little JavaScripts now that you're pulling in and all these little pixels that you're pulling in. And it's just going to kind of give you a warning that, hey, you're going to have some performance issues. If you put it all in Google Tag Manager, it tends to help performance as well as user interface, as well as not having to have everybody's little fingers in your website. Like here's access to the Google Tag Manager. Because I think the other thing about Google Tag Manager I like too is I can see who did what when, and you can publish.
Yes.
Right. So you can have someone have access to it, create this container inside Google Tag Manager, but not go live yet. Right. Or you can publish it and you put it, they force you to put a date and a description. So you can go back into history and you're like, what happened to my website?
Yeah.
Oh, Joe, the hell, Joe? You put this
and
thing
here in the
your
inspector, when I enable Data Slayer, you see it shows up
Mhm.
right here in the inspector.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the site on a separate window and you'll see what's happening in the Data Slayer. So it's actually tracking my IP address of where I'm coming from. It's tracking what browser I'm in, what browser version it thinks I'm running. So as I go through, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna add a product to the cart. So let me just add this product to the cart. Okay, so see, now it sees that I just added a product to the cart. It knows the price, it knows the information. It's starting to collect how I'm scrolling. And then if I was to actually come up here and go to the cart, it'll take me over and it'll show what's going on in the cart. And it'll tell me that it's still not worth anything because the purchase hasn't been made. Oh, actually, it's telling me that it's not worth anything because I did not add it to the cart correctly. We'll just add something else to the cart. There we go. So now when I come over here, it'll actually tell me what the total is, what the product is in the cart, the SKU number. It collects all of this information so that as you're going through, it's sending all of that data over to Google and letting them know what's happening as you view your products, as you do things.
So S, and sorry, S, all I see is S
Yeah.
right now. So you would say Google, yeah. You want me to read that?
Yes, exactly. It Tag Manager is your middleman. It is the service that sends the data to your desired locations.
So Eric, you went through, I'm gonna just throw out a question there. You went through everything really fast. So I wondered if you would walk slowly through how you would add a website and add the G4 analytics to the site.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Yeah. So in here in analytics, let me move this right.
Well, no, I meant how to add it in Tag Manager.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So in analytics, first thing you got to do is you got to come over here and you have got to find your tracking codes.
Right.
So your tracking code for UA is pretty straightforward. It's always going to be your UA. If you do not have a GA4, there's a setup assistant that'll walk through and it'll configure it. Once you get your GA4, you'll come in here, and this one is actually, where did it go? Hold on. Property settings.
Oh, and guys, I'm
It's the
recording this. If you ever need to go back to this,
There it is.
I'll send the recording out.
Yeah. So you come under your data stream and look at your data stream and get your measurement ID. Those are the two pieces that you have to get from Google Analytics to be able to configure Tag Manager.
Now, click that Google Tag Manager, though. We tend to do it like just below that. It'll configure it for you, right? So hit that. Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. It depends upon how you've configured it. And this will start you into Tag Manager. But for me, I already had Tag Manager running, and I wanted to make sure that I was connecting both services. And what happens is, depending upon how you configure it, it may actually tie Universal and GA4 together. And then you could just embed the code that they give you here onto the site. I find it's a little limiting because I don't get the ability to pick and choose what data I want to send out to the data layer. So once I've got my tags, I come to tagmanager.google.com. And out here, I've got create account. Create my account. And it says, who am I? Where am I? And what am I? So account name, web, domain name, web, and create. And I end up with an account. And in that account, it'll usually build a default container. Inside of once I get into the container is where I can start to import I can just import my my data.
So it's one website per account?
No, it is, I run, okay. So for instance, this one right here, this is actually five different websites.
Oh, okay.
Under this account.
Gotcha.
Now, generally, I do break up accounts based on company. So if this is a client company, so theirs sits by itself, because then I give access to them to that piece, but I don't want them having access to my stuff.
Sure.
But this is actually my wife's section. So these are her sites, and I can just put them all in one place.
Yep.
So once I've got my container, and if I need a new container, the 3 vertical dots, create container. Once I've got that container, it comes in as a blank container. And you know what? Here, we'll just create one. Create container. And it asks for your domain name. Tell it what it is, create it. And you've got a blank, you've got a new GTM code, and you have a blank system. There's nothing in it. There's no variables. There's nothing. Admin, import container. Choose the file that I send you.
Okay, I understand that part, but if I just wanted to add, I just want to do a simple thing. Just add a G4 account
To an existing one?
To this new one we just created.
Okay. Let me come over here. Let me come back out to it. So what I come down here is I create my variable.
So it's in the variables.
New variable. And then wait for Google to wake up. Okay, fine. Give Google a nudge in the right direction. New variable. Pencil to add. And what I want is, in this case, I'm doing a you want GA4?
Yeah.
GA4, I'm doing a constant.
Ah,
And I'm going to put my my G number.
right. I gotcha.
And I'm going to call it, in my case, I like to call it GA4 settings.
Sure. That's what I couldn't figure out, where you got the G4, because
Yep. And then my other one, my normal one would be
the analytic one.
it would be my Google Analytics.
Yeah.
And then it's my UA
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I found that one, but I couldn't figure out where you got the G4.
Yes. Yeah.
So
The
it's a constant.
the GA4. Actually, I call it GA4 property. But it's a constant, and it's a G value.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yep.
Google in their terms.
Yeah, well, because GA4 is still technically beta. Now, as you start to play with this, I've got another one I'm working on here right now, where it tracks specific. Hold on, let me go back up to the triggers. Or what it does is it's looking for anytime somebody makes a telephone inquiry or a hold on, back down here. So anytime somebody clicks on a mail to or a tell link. So if I've got a site and somebody clicks on that call me now button, if somebody's got those mail to links on there, that it specifically tracks, it allows me to start tracking that. And you see, I still use that GA settings and GA4 property, because inside the triggers, I build out my triggers. And then it's a universal analytics event request using those GA settings. A lot of power of what you can track.
Mm.
I have another question about integrating Google Tags with Jotform.
Yeah. Oh, there. Let's see. Give me a second here. See if I can find the link to it. I am. Here we go. So this is another website that's got a lot of great things on it. But I believe, and I know here somewhere it had he had something about well, here's the cookie management recipe. But I believe he had a something also about third-party forms. I haven't messed with Jotforms in a while because I wasn't a fan of their branding on my site, and the fact that I couldn't change button colors and stuff like that. That big green button just didn't look right on a website that was all done in purples. But this website's got a lot of good stuff on it. And then this was Simo Ava. This was his link about tracking outbound links. So if somebody clicks a link out to leave your site, this will track where they actually clicked and went. Well, I can't have answered everybody's questions. Tried. Well, I'm going to put my slides back on the screen so that you've got my information for now. I will type my email address back in the chat window. I will send a link to the notes today. Well, hopefully today, if not tomorrow. I just want to thank
And,
everybody
like I said-
for putting up with me.
That was good. That's great, Eric. I like when we do some more of advanced things, which I really appreciate. So I'm glad you kind of deep dived into it. So I'm actually going to share this with my developers and show them like, hey, we need to set some of this stuff up.
Yeah.
So I really
You can
appreciate that.
definitely do a lot with this.
Well, especially I really like the user exclusions. We've been doing too much at the granular level, doing it by IP address, but I do like the idea of doing more along the lines of users on a website. So I think for sure we'll kind of put that into place. So I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Love it. Hey guys, if there's any other questions, I recommend you emailing Eric. In the meantime, we've got, about 15 minutes left. So if anyone has any specific problems, whether that be Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, anyone got any issues with their website, or you got questions about your site, about this, specifically WordPress, feel free to pop it in. Like I said, we got all kinds of good, knowledgeable people here that you'll get more than one answer, which is great. So anyone have any questions, or you're stuck on something, or?
I got a gripe.
You got a gripe? Of course you do, Rick. What's your gripe, Rick?
Okay. On my website, I have Jetpack installed, heaven forbid, but there's several things that I like there. And periodically, you have to sign back into WordPress.com. And my gripe is when that login pops up and you're in the process of creating a post, it just messes up everything. You can't save. What you have to do is you have to leave the post, go back.
I got a trick for you.
Okay.
There you go. See?
Create a new, just open up a new tab. Just leave the thing right where it is. Don't touch it. Open up a new tab. Go to your normal login page, log in. It'll update the cookie in your browser and you won't lose your stuff.
Okay. All right. I'll try that because it just locks up everything.
I have another fix. It's a little less graceful. But I'll post it in the chat window in a second.
Yeah. My opinion is that WordPress should, if that window wants to pop up while you're in the creating window, it should wait till you go to some other place before that window pops up.
And so what the problem is it's a cookie that's got a specific time out that it expires at a specific time. Yeah,
it's about I think it's 36 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it starts counting as soon as the second you sign back in, it starts counting again.
Yeah. So here's a little less graceful fix. Drop that into a code snippet plugin or a must use plugin or something like that. Adjust that number on the line that says return to whatever number works better for you. That one's set for a year.
The best number for me is never, but
well, and in my opinion, it's 4 hours, but actually I want it to be on inactivity.
Yeah.
I want it to be on inactivity. So somebody logs in, wanders off for 15 minutes. I want it to log them out. Yeah. But if they're sitting there creating content, we'll keep them logged in until they're done.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's how I want it.
Yep. I agree. Because there's nothing worse than you're typing along. And first off, when that window pops up, you have no idea where it locked everything up.
Yep.
And so you have to go figure out, okay, and if you're in the middle of a paragraph and a nice mind thought and it leaves. That's one of the reasons why I started creating everything in text editor. That way I just post it in and I control the time. I use markdown language, so.
S has a question, any alternatives to Jotform? He wants an externally hosted forms.
Yep, I'm
That is HIPAA
going to
compliant.
post one here right now. Code Monkeys has a plugin that you use. It works with Gravity Forms and Caldera Forms, which Caldera Forms goes end of life next month. Now the down from here, you then because then obviously Gravity Forms is one of the better systems out there. You do have to pay Code Monkeys for their hosting. But
I would
here's the
even
link
ask-
to that.
We've worked with doctors, and that HIPAA thing is really pretty serious. We tend to tell them that, listen, you most likely already have an internal CRM or some kind of tool that you're using to manage your patients. And so we always say we recommend just using that tool itself. We've used Gravity Forms on it. We encrypt the whole site. We make sure that any entries are not saved on the site. They're immediately deleted once it's off the server and into their system, which I recommend if you are going to do that. But I would really ask the doctor's office if they already have something. Usually it's within that system that they've got, some patient management system that it has some kind of form widget. It may not look pretty. It may be pretty basic, but HIPAA can get pretty serious. So especially if anything, my feeling is I just don't want to be responsible for patient data in any way whatsoever. That's not the business I'm in. And so I always
you got to be careful
Mhm.
with those forms because
Mhm.
they send notifications, and if the email from your site to the email sender isn't encrypted, then it's not HIPAA
Exactly.
compliant. So
Exactly.
if you're
Yep.
using like Gmail to send your notices, that's not HIPAA compliant.
Right. That's why we we really encourage people don't you already have a patient management system?
Well, and even if you've got the page workspace, if you haven't gone in and actually signed that HIPAA agreement, it's not technically configured correctly. And most people don't realize it. Google, Microsoft, any of the systems, they say that their email is encrypted between servers, but that's that's if the other server accepts it. And email coming back to them is only encrypted if the connection works correctly. There is a way to go in and configure it that it will not accept the connection if it's not encrypted. It's called MTA-STS. And it's actually not hard to configure. Google supports it with all you have to do is you have to have a website that hosts a single text file listing out your MX records for Google and with some specific information in it, and then it'll only make connections to Google servers via TLS. If they can't make the connection, they won't send. See, there we go. We went deep again.
Doesn't take
Yeah.
long.
It doesn't. Anyone else have any other questions that you're stuck on? Website's not doing what you want it to do. It's not performing like you want. It's not driving traffic like you want.
I've got a quick plugin question.
Okay.
Trying to get something that'll allow me to give access to restrict, which users can access certain pages. So not just by a user type, but like a specific user name. Thoughts?
Say it again.
Well, so
What?
like if we've got say 10 people that we want to be able to only access certain parts of the site so that they can't go, I want them to be able to go in and edit just the, like text and pictures and whatnot, but only on their certain sections page. I don't want them to go and fuss with other pages.
So these are normal, just basically admin users, but you want to limit what they can touch.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I preferably want
Advanced
them to
Access
be like,
Manager.
okay. So, but do they have to be admin for that? Because I'd really rather they not have that level of control.
No,
They-
actually, what I do is Advanced Access Manager allows me to create custom user roles. And it also allows me to say, based on that custom user role, for instance, I have a site that board members, it's got board members, it's got president, it's got treasurer, it's got whoever. The president can only go in and edit the president's page.
Okay, perfect.
Cannot edit any other pages, cannot create new pages, and cannot take the currently live page and switch it back to a draft. They can only mark it they can submit a revision that somebody else has to approve before it goes live.
And Lauren, they've got settings in there that are like real world settings. Like you'll understand what everybody can do. There's 2 versions that you can toggle on and off. The developers like techie version, and then there's the end user, like here's what this person can do. And so
Okay,
they made it really easy, but you can create users. Like we create them for like marketing, the marketing team, right? We don't want them mucking around with plugins, and we don't muck them with appearance. We just need them to, like you were saying, update a page, change a page, and that's it. The other thing that we like about it too is it really hides all that stuff on the navigation gets cleaned up for different. So sometimes we even do that for website owners, the people that we might do care plan work for. We'll create user accounts for them because they don't want to see all that stuff either. That confuses them. They don't want to mess with it. They're afraid to touch it. So if we just create a user account for them, it allows them to do just a few things. It really, really helps.
I stack it with published press revisions. If I really need to control if people posting something without it going live.
Ooh, that's a good one.
But yeah, I've actually been known. I've got a website where the users had to be administrators. So I took the editor role and renamed it as administrator, and renamed administrator to developer.
Sneaky. We've done that too, though.
Yeah.
The public press
No, you
revisions
can
one
admin
you
access.
said
What do you
was, that's to be able to to put something and see it before it goes live.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
That's a
it's
cool
we've got different sections of the organization, and there's fear amongst the committee, oh, well, we don't want people from this other section coming in and mucking around in, our section. It's like, oh, okay, because some of them would. They would have no boundaries.
Now, question though, is it categories of pages, like certain pages? I don't know if Access Manager allows you to control. Can you do it by category of posts? I don't know if you can do that.
Oh, well, so
can you?
the way I'm doing it, I have the president, and that person has access to pages that are in their name. Then I have, let's say, then I've got programs that has access to stuff in their name.
What do you mean by in their name? Like,
So they've got a username,
Mhm.
and the page they're showing as the author for that page.
Okay. So I would just need to go in and change the author after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now there is a bug with 5.9 that only allows you to change to certain user roles, change authors to certain user roles. Used to be that you could change it to anybody from a contributor and above, but they've changed it so that now that it's author, editor, and administrator only.
Gotcha.
But if you're interested, I've got a code snippet that'll hack around that too.
Oh,
I didn't like that option.
I love code snippets.
I'm looking for it now. There we go.
Well, guys, I'll let you, next month I've got lined up is, oh gosh, what's her name? All of a sudden, I always do this. It's in my brain and then I lose it. Hold on, let me get her in here because she is, hold on a second. She's a content person, marketing. Oh, come on. Where'd she go? March. There she is. Please tell me she's in here. You guys might know her. No? She's not in here. Oh, wait. Ah, Kim Doyle. Yes. Y'all familiar with Kim Doyle?
Yes.
She's like the content queen. She's just, I haven't quite gotten her specific topic yet. She hasn't sent that yet, but I do have someone lined up. She might talk blogging overall and what to blog about, but I'll share that with everybody as soon as I get that. But I do have her lined up for March. I'm looking, April should be, I've got someone lined up for April. I haven't got it completely confirmed yet. Hopefully someone that does affiliate marketing and blogging and how to go advanced blogging. I haven't heard back from him to confirm that yet, but hopefully I'll get back soon on that. So March and April are pretty good. From May and June, I don't have anyone yet. So if anyone has any recommendations, feel free. Here's my email address. chhawkins@globalspecs.com. Feel free to email me. Other than that, if anyone's got any other questions, cool, but it's 12:30. So cool. Thank you again, Eric. That was great. Love it.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks.
Good
Thanks
stuff.
for having me.
No, it was, you saved my butt. So thank you again. Hey guys, appreciate you all. Have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, and see you guys next month. Bye.